Good morning, everyone. It's delightful to see your bright, smiley faces. Are we going to get the echo? Oh, good. We're going to fix this. The echo's the worst. Good morning, everyone. I guess I will call the April 12th, 2022 State Land Board meeting to order. I think the only sort of miraculous thing about today is that we're all here in person. Yes, and that we're not wearing masks, at least not yet anyway. Let's knock on wood. And I believe it's Secretary Fagan's first time in this room. So welcome. And we're just delighted you're here and glad to see everyone. So with that, Director Walker, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Governor, members of the Land Board. It is truly an exciting day to be back live in person. I feel like it's our first day at the legislature again, since all of us serve there and know what it's like, but we will not go home with the Capitol crud. I promise you that. All right, the first thing on our agenda today is a consent item to request approval of the minutes of the February 8, 2022 State Land Board meeting, and that is on page 4 of your screen if you are following along on your computer.
Thank you, Director Walker. Secretary Fagan, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Secretary Fagan moves approval of the minutes of the February 8th, 2022 State Land Board meeting. Is there a second? I see the treasurer is jumping up and down to second that motion. Hearing and seeing no objection, the motion is approved. Moving on to action items, Director Walker.
Thank you, Governor. Action item 2 is also a very exciting item. It focuses on incorporating the Stevens Road Tract into the city of Bend, at least the last remaining 261 acres, and the steps we need to follow to keep moving forward. The issue and authorities are set out below. If you'll all remember, actually, I get shivers about this one because this was a very exciting bill in the 2021 session. House Bill 3318 offers a very unique path to incorporate the remaining 261 acres of the Stevens Road Tract. It wasn't an easy path to get to the end, but we made it. This opportunity will add much needed affordable residential housing in the community and certainly enhance the value of school lands for the future benefit of the Common School Fund. As you know, the Stevens Road Tract is located east of Bend near the intersection of 27th Avenue and Stevens Road. The department acquired the 643-acre tract as in lieu land from the Bureau of Land Management back in 1997 to satisfy some outstanding in lieu lands they owe us. They still owe us about $1,500. We're working on that. But it partially satisfied the debt. In 2016, the western 382 acres were brought into the Bend UGB, and these acres were sold by the department at your request in 2020, and they are currently in process of being developed into a complete community with a mix of housing and employment opportunities, which is really tremendous. So all we have left are the 261 acres that I mentioned. You'll see a property map as Appendix A that gives you an outline of where that is. And we will have, after my remarks today, I believe Anthony Broadman, a Bend City Councilor, and Brian Rankin, the Bend Long Range Planning Manager, will have a few comments to make. So let me refresh your memory about 3318. To ensure the development of affordable housing, this House bill requires the designation of 20 acres of land to be deed restricted for the use of households that make less than the area median income. Additionally, that very innovative approach that I'm excited about is 7 acres of that 20 will be made available to the extent permitted by law in a manner that gives a priority to households in which at least one individual is employed by an education provider. This is a very novel approach, never been done in Oregon before, and I'm very excited to see how this develops. As part of the process outlined in the House Bill 3318, the City of Bend is developing the tract, which explains future planning amendments and intended uses and zoning for the site. Work on the plan began in October of 2021 because the city wasted no time. And it has included a very robust public engagement process, multiple open houses and public meetings. And I'm sure the city councilor will talk to you a little bit about that. The city intends to present the plan to Bend's Planning Commission and City Council for approval this spring, moving quickly. And House Bill 3318 requires an approved plan be submitted to DLCD by July 1. So the next steps in the process is that we as a department are required to submit a letter of support to the Department of Land Conservation and Development, giving its consent to the city to pursue incorporating Stevens Road Tract into the Bend UGB. The letter should note that DSL has established an agreement with the city of Bend regarding the terms of conveying the affordable housing land, and DSL is currently working with the city staff on finalizing that draft. So the appraised value for the 20 acres is at $35,000 per acre. If the city is able to legally provide a housing preference to education employees, that 7-acre portion of the 20 acres will be made available for that use and transferred to the city at no cost. The exact location of those acres will be determined once the development begins. The city will continue to engage with the public. It's one thing about the city of Bend and the city I live in, Eugene, and many cities across Oregon, we're very robust in our public engagement process. So assuming all of this happens, DSL will return to the land board with a process for marketing and sale of the remaining 261 acres, but I think that will take some time. So my final recommendation for you all today is the department recommends the state land board, 1, approve submittal of a letter by DSL to the Department of Land Conservation and Development, giving its consent for the city of Bend to pursue incorporating the remaining 261 acres of the Stevens Road Tract into the Bend UGB, and 2, authorizes DSL to enter into an intergovernmental agreement for the sale and transfer of 20 of those acres for affordable housing land to the city of Bend at the appraised value. And that's my presentation, and I believe we have 2 people to testify. They're on the telephone. Okay.
Or Zoom. You're on Zoom.
Okay.
This is Anthony Broadman. I'm not sure if I'm up yet, Governor.
Oh, we hear you. I don't see you.
Okay. Well, I can.
Please proceed.
Great. Thank you.
There you are. Now we see you. It's
Okay.
great to see you. Hi.
Okay,
Thank
hi.
you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
This is one of the silver linings of the pandemic, right? You didn't have to drive all the way over here. So
Saved me a drive, which I appreciate. Good morning, Governor. Good morning, members of the Land Board. I'm Bend City Councilor Anthony Broadman. I am a council designee to the Stevens Road Tract concept plan. I was involved in the legislative origins of House Bill 3318 during the 2021 session. And I'd like to share council's formal support for the progress that the community, the city, DSL are all making on this project to make it a reality in coming years. And I also want to extend the city's gratitude to Director Walker, DSL staff, our staff, including Brian Rankin, who's with me here today, and Eric Kanzler, who have all worked tirelessly to put this innovative concept, I would agree with the director, into a framework that will succeed. And we are glad that this project will also help the state meet its obligations to the Common School Fund, including through that innovative housing initiative, prioritizing educator housing, and along with capital A, affordable housing. House Bill 3318 allows the city to move forward on the planning and development of this subject 261 acres to help Bend address its housing crisis, while also creating a strong mixed-use community, respecting the context of this location in our city, the history of the site, and unique opportunities that Director Walker alluded to through collaboration with partner agencies, and especially the public here in Bend. We've been engaged in a accessible public process focused on driving input from the public on the Stevens Road Tract. This has been titled Concept to Community, and it's been underway since November, and it's on track for consideration by my colleagues and I on council in June. And I would agree that things are moving very quickly, especially from a planning perspective. The work has been extremely high quality. Public and local agencies have been involved through online open houses and work with a project team. To date, thousands of people have reviewed the project website, the materials. Hundreds have provided feedback in online surveys. There are always many different opinions regarding development and growth in Bend, but from my perspective as city councilor, given the moment we're in our existential housing crisis, I believe there is generally very strong support for adding more land for housing through this project. Overall, the city has learned that this site is feasible and ideal for future development based on existing and planned infrastructure and the solid on-site characteristics of this piece of property. The concept planning process has combined public input, agency input, to result in 3 land use alternatives, all of which meet or exceed the requirements of House Bill 318. And the on-ground implementation of the affordable housing provisions outlined in the bill are being addressed by close work between staff and DSL, and we're making great progress on that. We anticipate meeting the project timelines, having a project we can all be proud of at the end of the planning and approval process. So the concepts that are emerging and which will be detailed in subsequent processes as outlined in the bill will result in a really unique neighborhood. It has a mix of affordable market housing to serve a broad range of income levels. I want the land board to know that our median home price hit $773,000 yesterday. So this project will add housing supply to Bend during a housing crisis that I know we're all feeling, but we are feeling it especially acutely here. The alternatives that have been developed will provide between 1,600 and 2,400 housing units, with roughly 700 being affordable to people at 60 to 80% of the area median income. This isn't the only solution to our housing crisis, but it's an example of one of the things we're doing, we believe, to head in the right direction. This project reflects the goals of the forthcoming CFAC rules. It reflects the need to plan for equity and ensure that people from all backgrounds and with all different types of housing needs can share in the kinds of egalitarian communities we all want to live in and develop and plan for. Particular attention has been paid to creating an equitable land use plan centered on having those amenities like parks and commercial services and affordable housing being close to schools, being close to transit, being close to robust trail systems. This is a potentially 15-minute neighborhood, but not just for well-heeled home buyers who historically have been able to afford sustainability, to afford the 15-minute neighborhood. Public open space in the forms of a large park. Again, the trail systems will provide recreational opportunities in Southeast Bend and to the future residents on the site. And the site will be served by a robust transit infrastructure facility, low stress bicycle network, and of course, pedestrian facilities. These will create the kind of unique development that we all know we need here in Bend as we struggle with our home prices. So as a city councilor, I'm excited to move ahead. Excited to consider the concept plan in June. After that, I will commit to working towards the city meeting its procedural obligations as quickly as possible, while guaranteeing we still have robust input, public outreach, and a quality end result for our folks here in Bend. So thank you for your support. Thank you for your incredible staff's expertise and helping Bend meet its obligation to its people.
Thank you very much, Councilor Broadman. Does Mr. Mann wish to speak as well? Oh, I was like, oh, that's yours.
Yep.
Oh, he's yours. Do you- Ryan Rank. Okay. Well, there are a lot of Ryans. So, Mr. Rankin. Oh, Brian Rankin. Okay. Guess I need stronger
Thank you.
glasses. Hi there. Thanks for
just here to
joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm just here to answer questions if any technical questions arise. Councilor Broadman did a fantastic job summarizing the project and the progress and the collaboration, and we're really excited to move forward in the project. So thank you. Thank your staff especially. They've been working hard alongside our team, and it's been an absolute pleasure to work with them. Fantastic staff over there at DSL. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And we're delighted you were able to join us via Zoom. I just have to say, I know the challenges in Central Oregon are extraordinary. Obviously, we face housing challenges in every community across the state. We really appreciate the collaborative, collective approach that the city of Bend is taking. I had an opportunity a couple of weeks ago to tour 2 affordable housing projects. The first was Legacy Landing, which is a senior facility, and it was just a really wonderful project, closely connected to transportation and right next door to a health clinic, which a federally qualified health center, which seemed very appropriate. And then the other project was Canal Commons, John Gilbert and Rob Roy, a really fabulous project as well. So really appreciate the efforts you all are making. Do we have any questions? None. We are also excited to just move forward, and thank you both very much for joining us. Director Walker, back to you.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciated your commentary today and your grateful comments about working with our staff, which I happen to believe is a great staff too. So, Governor, the recommendation is on the table. Would be a motion.
Thank you very much, Director Walker. The recommendation is to have the State Land Board approve submittal of a letter by DSL to the Department of Land Conservation and Development, giving its consent for the City of Bend to pursue incorporating the remaining 261 acres of the Stevens Road tract into the Bend UGB. And number 2, authorizes DSL to enter into an intergovernmental agreement for the sale and transfer of those acres for affordable housing land for the City of Bend at appraised value. Is that right? Did I get that right?
You've got it right.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, I move the staff recommendation as eloquently described by you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Treasurer. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I see a second. Hearing and seeing no objection. So approved.
Exciting.
Congratulations. That's really, really exciting. Your team did a really amazing job on this, and I'm really excited we're moving forward.
Yes, thank you. And I'm glad you had an opportunity to see what they were doing in Central Oregon. All right, we'll move on to action item 3. This is an equally exciting, somewhat exciting, I think, because we're building more single-family housing. Agenda item 3 is page 10 on your screen for those of you listening. To request final approval to sell 15.35 acres of subsurface mineral and geothermal rights within the city limits to allow housing development. The issues and authorities are set out below. On January 6th, just a couple months ago, the department received an application from East Park LLC to purchase the subsurface minerals and geothermal rights to a property located northwest of the Cordon Road and State Street intersection in the Salem city limits. And you see how quickly we acted here at the department because they can't build without this sale taking place. East Park LLC owns the surface lands of the property, and the city of Salem requires them to own the subsurface mineral rights also to be able to dedicate the right-of-way and satisfy the city's development codes. The proposed sale was posted for a 2-week public comment period. One comment was received from the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, hoping that notice would be provided of the issuance of any permits. And the department, our department archaeologist, Gary Curtis notified the Grand Ron that they should contact the city of Salem regarding those permitting and project question issues because they'll be issuing the permits. It is standard policy for the Department of State Lands to retain mineral and geothermal resource rights. However, under OAR 141-067-320, the State Land Board may approve the release and transfer of those rights when evaluation reveals there is no or limited resource potential in the land, and then it's in the best interest of the people of the state. The City of Salem zoning ordinance does not allow mining of residentially zoned property in the city limits, and also the department did a study, a mineral potential review last year for another property we brought before you that covered a 10-mile radius and determined there are really no minerals of significant value. So selling the mineral rights will enable the development of the property for housing and provide the greatest benefit to the people of Oregon. The sale price for this transaction is a mere $250, but it's a $250 well spent by the applicant and certainly well received by the department. The recommendation would be that the department recommends the State Land Board approve the sale of the subsurface minerals and geothermal rights for the property located northwest of the intersection of Cordon Road and State Street in the city of Salem, Township 7 South, Range 2 West, Section 29C, tax lots 200, 300, and 400. And your site map is located in Appendix A.
Do we have a motion? Secretary Fagan.
Thank you, Governor. I recommend that we approve the sale, or excuse me, I move that we approve the sale of the subsurface minerals and geothermal rights for the property located northwest of the intersection of Cordon Road and State Street in the city of Salem, Township 7 South, Range 2 West, Section 29C, tax lots 200, 300, and 400.
I should have asked if there are any questions or comments. I thought this one was pretty straightforward. Okay.
Don't make me say that again, Madam Chair.
Okay, I won't. Don't worry. Do we have a second? We have a second from the treasurer. Hearing and seeing no objection, the motion is approved.
Thank you.
Again, really pleased to see this moving forward, more housing, which the state needs, frankly, in every community across the state.
And we couldn't agree with you more. We're doing the best we can here at the department to help that happen. So thank you, members. We appreciate it. All right, we'll move on to action item number 4, and then we'll get into some exciting informational items. But this one is exciting. It's page 13 on your screen if you're following along at home. The issue is whether the State Land Board should authorize the acquisition of 0.56 acres adjacent to the entrance of the South Slough Reserves Visitor Center. And that is property map is located in Appendix A, page 16 on your screen. The authorities are set out below. The land is located off Seven Devils Road, and I'll give all the details when I give the recommendation. Actually, I'll have to do that now because I don't see it on there. So I'm going to tell you where it is. The land is located off of Seven Devils Road in Coos County at Township 26 South, Range 14 West, Section 26, and tax lot 500, so that the record is very clear. So in June of last year, the year before, June 2020, the State Land Board approved due diligence for the purchase of 2 properties at the South Slough entrance totaling 1.7 acres. That you'll see that in Appendix B. The properties are adjacent to the driveway off Seven Devils Road, and the driveway serves as a primary access point for the South Slough Reserves Visitor Center, which is a key facility for reserve visitors and staff. The acquisition of both properties will secure state ownership at the entrance and will improve the health, safety, and appearance of the reserve's entryway. The first of the 2 properties was purchased from Coos County Department of Forestry in October of 2021, following approval from the Land Board in February of that year. The 1.14 acre property was purchased for $85,000, funded by a federal grant from, I'll spell it out, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, otherwise known as NOAA, and a $25,000 donation from the Friends of South Slough, also known as FOSS. Well, Friends of South Slough are stepping up again. The South Slough Reserve is requesting permission to acquire that second piece of property of 0.56 acres, and an option agreement as Appendix C to purchase the property from the owner, Roland Block, for $40,000 was signed in January of this year, subject to final land board approval. Funding for the sale will be provided by Friends of South Slough, the entire $40,000. The Friends of South Slough put down $4,000 as a down payment, and they're required to, as part of the option agreement, come up with the other $36,000 by October 31 of 2022. Once acquired, of course, the property will be managed as special stewardship lands, and the reserve will initiate efforts to improve the overall condition of the properties. And there's more information there. In May of 2020, reserve staff requested input on the proposed acquisition from cultural and natural resources staff of the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siouxland Indians, and the Coquel Indian Tribe, and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, and all replied with no concerns, which is just great to hear. The property was recently appraised to estimate its market value, which is $40,000. It's at low risk for cultural resources. Public notice of the potential acquisition was sent to adjacent property owners, local governments, and tribal authorities. And the Friends of South Slough have provided a letter of their support of the acquisition of the $40,000 in Appendix D. And you can find the department's internal land evaluation form as Appendix E, and it's on page 35 on your screen. That's a document we use internally to mark all the boxes and check all the boxes to make sure we're appropriately appraising this property correctly. We are at the recommendation stage, and so the department recommends the land board approve the purchase of tax lot 500 containing 0.56 acres of land adjacent to the entrance of South Slough Reserve's Visitor Center, and the other details I listed earlier about the township and range.
Thank you, Director Walker. I assume we have no public testimony on this item.
We do not.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none. Treasurer Reed.
Madam Chair, move approval of the staff recommendation, the purchase of tax lot 500, the land adjacent to the South Slough Reserve's Visitor Center.
Do we have a second? Second. Great. Hearing and seeing no objection to the motion is approved.
Thank you. And members, I'm looking forward to showing you what they do at the South Slough at our meeting in August that we were supposed to have 2 years ago before the pandemic hit. And I can tell you the staff of the South Slough is very thrilled to have us come down there for a meeting, and they're busily preparing fun things to do with your families while you're in the Charleston, Coos Bay area. So more on that to come. All right, we'll move along to agenda item 5. Well, we have informational items that are going to knock your socks off today. I am so excited about all of our informational items. And I'd like to invite Malia Masiba up to the table. She's our Government and Legislative Affairs Director, and she'll give you the 2022 legislative session update, which for a short session was very, very busy. I have to tell you, it was exciting. And there's so many things that came out of the legislature that align with our strategic plan initiatives. And we'll have a strategic plan update for the board at our June meeting. For now, I will just say that seeing Team DSL working on these important projects that reflects our values as an agency in the state is uplifting. We appreciate the leadership all three of you show to the department. The environmental justice work is particularly exciting as we are examining how we are engaging with communities and how we can close the gap between current practices and creating meaningful opportunities. And of course, realizing an enduring solution for the Elliott State Forest remains a strategic priority. and passing Senate Bill 1546 and securing that $121 million for decoupling was a tremendous effort. And Malia is going to tell you about it, but I do want to mention publicly, we did receive our $121 million just this morning from the statewide audit and budget reporting section. So it is now in our hands and we are so excited. I've got shivers on that one. I'm just really proud of all the work we've done, and Jeff Huntington will be up in a little bit to join Malia to talk about the Elliott. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Malia to talk about this wonderful short session we had. And Governor, I'm so excited that the legislative sessions have been so productive for you in your last year in office. It's just tremendous.
Thank you. Welcome, Malia. It's good to see you. So I'm going to talk really briefly about the legislative session that happened in February. And then as the director indicated, we'll pivot and talk about the Elliott in a little bit more detail. I think they're trying to pull up a slide. I'm going to go ahead and start and we'll see if it catches up with us. So, the Department of State Lands went into the February 2022 session with a very short but significant list of priorities. And namely, that was the support of Senate Bill 1546 to establish the Elliott State Research Forest. The bill was introduced by Senator Lee Byer on behalf of the members of the State Land Board. And we thank you very much for your support of that bill this last session. The Department of State Lands, Oregon State University, and DSL, and the DSL appointed Elliott State Research Forest Advisory Committee have been working collaboratively since 2019 to explore the establishment of the Elliott as a publicly owned working research forest. And Senate Bill 1546 is an important step toward this vision via the establishment of the Elliott as a research forest, as well as the establishment of the Elliott State Research Forest Authority, a new independent public agency that will oversee the forest and contract with OSU to manage the forest on a day-to-day basis as a research forest. Senate Bill 1546 accounts for each of the elements that the Land Board directed DSL to ensure were a part of any successful future for the Elliott. Keeps it publicly owned, managed under the framework of an HCP, a habitat conservation plan, while taking into account a multitude of benefits, including tribal partnerships, and sets the stage for the forest to be decoupled from its Common School Fund obligation. So Senate Bill 1546 passed with bipartisan support on Thursday, March 3rd. So thank you again for your efforts there. And then separate from, but parallel to the bill, there was a $121 million request, as we just discussed, to be applied toward the remaining balance of the Forest Common School Fund obligation in order to set the stage for the forest decoupling. Governor Brown was instrumental in making that request and letting the legislature know that it was a priority. And as a result, the full $121 million was awarded at the end of session. And as we just celebrated, actually has moved into the Common School Fund at this point. So these two accomplishments together set the stage for the department, the university, and the advisory committee to continue the work necessary to establish the Elliott as a world-class research forest. So a few other things that we looked at this for this past session was, in addition to the $121 million for the Common School Fund on behalf of the Elliott State Forest, $1 million will come through DSL to the Oregon Ocean Science Trust for research and monitoring of nearshore habitat. The Oregon Ocean Science Trust, otherwise known as OOST, is its own independent entity, but it's housed within DSL, and the department does assist in the support and operation of OOST work.
I was just going to ask, my recollection is that the legislature has struggled to fund this since its inception, and I'm glad to see these dollars going into this program.
Yes, and I believe, OOST is beginning to grow and actually able to start accomplishing some more work, awarding some grants around, for example, nearshore habitat. So we're happy to support that. And DSL does, a portion of those funds go toward administration so that DSL is ensuring proper protection of Common School Fund assets as well. As we move forward and put some space between the session and pivot toward interim conversations,
Some of the things that the department will continue to keep an eye on include following statewide conversations regarding housing as the state examines how we respond to Oregon's housing crisis, land use discussions, and how and where that intersects with wetland and waterways protection is an important piece of DSL's work. Likewise, as the state continues to consider how we account for carbon sequestration and other climate goals, those things impact DSL's school lands management policies. So we'll continue to follow those conversations as well. The department will be working on a salmon credit concept that may potentially become a part of DSL's aquatic resource mitigation framework in the future. And lastly, we will continue our diversity, equity, and inclusion work through both the implementation of statewide policies as well as examining improvement opportunities through our agency's strategic plan. So for example, in accordance with the recently passed Senate Bill 1560, DSL is reviewing the language that we use that is in our statutes, rules, and internal documents to ensure that the language there reflects our values as a state and our inclusion and service to all Oregonians. We've also begun to examine how we ensure that there's meaningful engagement with environmental justice communities. We look forward to continuing to work with the Environmental Justice Council as established in House Bill 4077. So as you can see, while the session was brief, important work did emerge from this past short session, and we'll continue to keep you apprised of interim conversations as we move forward, not limited to, but definitely including the Elliott.
Questions or comments?
All right, Mr. Jeff Huntington, if you want to come up and join us at the table. We're going to have Jeff and has some slides for you and some information about what we have left to do on the Elliott State Research Forest project. I'd like to say we really got a lot done, but we did, but there's still a lot more to do. And I want the land board to be aware of what it is we're doing, who's doing it, and when you're going to see those results. So Jeff is our policy advisor. Oh, that's right. Malia's going to start with that, and then Jeff's going to chime in. So I'm going to back away and let these two great people who've been so involved in the Elliott take the lead from here.
So as you all know, short sessions are fast and furious. And so we did pass a very significant bill with Senate Bill 1546. But because of the pace at which a short session moves, we just want to take a minute today to just walk through the bill a little bit at a high level so that you have a full understanding of that piece of legislation. Then I am going to hand it over to Jeff, and he's going to pivot to what we're looking at as we continue to move forward. So you know, as each of you know, passing a piece of legislation of this scope is absolutely a team effort. And like each of the other steps that has been taken forward on the Elliott, there were many people involved in preparing both the legislation itself and equally as important, the path forward through the legislature for Senate Bill 1546. So I know many folks today here will help join me in thanking you for your support in these efforts. It unquestionably helped ensure that this legislation was successful. So thank you for prioritizing this work and for helping pass it. We also could not have done this again without the advisory. So once again, these folks came through dedicating an incredible amount of time, discernment, and a willingness to work together in order to craft a bill that would codify the structure, the mission, and the management policies of an Elliott State Research Forest. This advisory committee continues to impress me with their commitment to the work. I'd like to give a special shout out to the 6 members who volunteered to focus on the legislative efforts and worked tirelessly for months to help shape the legislation that would become 1546. Those 6 advisory committee members were Bob Salinger, Portland Audubon, Mark Stern, previously of the Nature Conservancy, Paul Beck with the Douglas Timber Operators, Melissa Cribbins, Coos County Commissioner, Colin Beck from the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians, and Keith Timchuk, Reedsport resident, multiply elected public official, longtime educator. So those folks put in a great deal of work in order to see Senate Bill 1546 move forward.
You forgot the most important part about Keith Timchuk, who is his brother.
I was going to say Carrie Timchuk. So I'm going to take a look at the bill at a very high level. So of course, the enrolled version of Senate Bill 1546 is always available at the Oregon Legislative Information System, or OLIS, and so it can be reviewed in detail at any time. But today, we're really going to focus on the agreements and direction that emerged from the guidance and thoughtful questioning of the advisory committee. So Senate Bill 1546 achieves several things. It codifies the mission and management policies of the research forest in statute, ensuring the Elliott is managed for public benefit into perpetuity. Specifically in Section 2, the legislation identifies 11 management policies that were carefully, sometimes painstakingly, negotiated by the multitude of interests who have been represented throughout this process. One particular management policy I'd like to make sure folks see in Section 2 is a reflection of the commitment to tribal partnership. Tribal representatives of the advisory committee worked with us to ensure that good language was included to ensure tribal protections, consultation, and coordination in the future of the Elliots. Another key piece of this section is the identification of 4 foundational documents. So in addition to the legislation, Senate Bill 1546 calls out Oregon State University's College of Forestry's Elliott State Research Forest Proposal, the Habitat Conservation Plan, and the Oregon State University Forest Management Plan as 4 key management guidance documents, and requires that should management policies in any of these documents be changed in the future, there's a public decision-making process, and that those changes remain in alignment with the mission and management policies in Section 2. So Senate Bill 1546 also establishes the Elliott State Research Forest Authority, again, a new independent public agency which will keep the forest in public ownership, and specifies that the authority will contract with the university to manage the forest on a day-to-day basis as a research forest. The bill defines the roles the university and the land board will play in the forest in the future. And in Section 7, it expands and protects public engagement beyond public meetings law in the decision-making process for the management of the Elliots. Of course, an important factor of Senate Bill 1546 is that it lays the groundwork for the decoupling of the forest from the School Fund. And lastly, in Section 31, it specifies that all of the aforementioned actions are contingent upon the completion of a short list of sunset provisions. I'm going to review those briefly, and then Jeff is going to walk you through those at a closer level. So in order for Senate Bill 1546 to be fully implemented, the following actions must occur in no particular order on or before July 1st of 2023. The land board ensures that the forest's financial obligation to the Common School Fund is met. A habitat conservation plan final draft published. DSL contracts with a third party to review OSU's financial plan for the forest and finds it sufficient. The land board approves the forest management plan that's currently in development with OSU. Oregon State University's Board of Trustees authorizes the university to participate in the management of the Elliott State Research Forest. And the land board takes action to decouple the Elliott from the Common School Fund. So as you can see, there's still much work to be done. But with the passage of Senate Bill 1546, we are one step closer to having North America's largest world-class research forest as Oregon's backyard. So I'm going to turn things over to Jeff after I thank each of you one more time for your support and commitment to this project.
So, before I start going into the work ahead of us, I just want to take a moment and just think about, you remember 5 years ago, next month, we were all in this room, or many of us were in this room with drums beating outside and a big crowd wondering what was going to happen. And President Ray and Dean Manis came and sat at this table, and the dean gave you his vision, and we started the conversations. And I think it's a moment to stop and just reflect about what has been accomplished over the last 5 years. And Thomas Mannis was a dear friend of mine, and he used to say to me, hard work is the work worth doing. That was his mantra. And the Elliott has been every bit of that and still is. I'm not going to go into all the details that are on this spreadsheet, but we wanted to at least give you a sense of the different threads of work that are the hard work that still is to come, and how that aligns in a timeline of sorts. And it starts with the Oregon State University Forest Management Plan. OSU's in the driver's seat on this. They're working with our advisory committee members, and Oregon Consensus is helping out on that process. DSL is providing the funding to resource the effort. There are really two big milestones coming up this year that we all need to be aware of and that we're tracking. And the first one is September 1st, where key provisions of that forest management plan will be in a draft form and start really going through a review by the full advisory committee, as opposed to the working group that's working closely with the university. And that will lead us to our goal of having those key sections of the forest management plan ready for a land board discussion in December. And much like we did in 2020, where the OSU proposal was presented to you with the advisory committee being fully briefed and comfortable with where it was headed, but still some work to be done. That's where we hope to be in December of this year with the forest management plan. The next thing on the list is the HCP. We had submitted an administrative draft to the HCP in the fall, and the federal agencies have informed us that it is what we call NEPA ready at this point, which means that they see no significant fatal flaw in the draft document we submitted, and that it's ready to begin the environmental impact statement NEPA process, as well as the finalization of terms. And so we're working right now with the Fish and Wildlife Service and NIMS as they conduct the review and comment, and we have some back and forth on how to adjust terms. And the federal government agencies now are taking over the public review process. And so there'll be public hearings beginning on the HCP NEPA analysis next month. And then there'll be work throughout the summer. And I think we'll see another public review process being managed by Fish and Wildlife Service on what are near final HCP and NEPA documents in the fall. And that all leads toward an anticipated milestone that was set forth in the legislation of July 1, 2023, having the final HCP and NEPA documents published for the final review process. So we're on track with that, and there's a lot of work to be done, but it's now in the hands of Fish and Wildlife Service and NIMS, and we're working with them to address their issues so they can go through the regulatory process that they're bound to go through. The next issue on the timeline is the financial plan. Malia mentioned that. It's a requirement of the statute. OSU is in the lead on preparing the plan. DSL's responsibility is to review that and sign off. The intention here is to have a financial accounting that really shows that the intended research management plan can produce enough harvest over time to balance the books on an annual basis and on an ongoing basis to make sure that the forest is financially self-supporting. So we will move through that process so that an independent review is conducted over the summer of the draft financial plan that OSU presents to us next month. We'll have time in the fall then to talk about that with the advisory committee and daylight it with the public so that we have engagement around and an understanding of what's happening with the financial plan for the forest. And that'll set the director up to make a determination late in fall, but be here in front of you in December, having that piece of work in place. And that seems to be a totally achievable objective for all of us. The next piece is the appraisal and decoupling part. So the department is contracted with Mason Bruce Gerard for an update of the 2016 appraisal for the forest, which valued the forest at $221 million, as you know. That updated version it will account for the addition of an HCP, a Supreme Court decision that came out after since the prior appraisal was done, and also the growth, timber growth on the forest since 2016 on the as factors that will go into the appraised value. We expect that work to be completed by early summer. We also have a lot of work to do to prepare necessary findings to support a board vote to decouple the forest. Things like delineating the boundaries of exactly what is being decoupled, and work that the Department of Justice and Matt will be involved in heavily. We're headed toward having that work completed also before December land board meeting of this year. Currently, we have an appraised value of $221 million. If that changes, we'll be having some conversations with you about the implications of that. As you know, the School Board Association is representing Common School Fund beneficiaries on the advisory committee, and we have been communicating regularly with them on this thread of work, and we'll keep doing that as it unfolds. So that's the appraisal and decoupling pieces. And if you look at the work plan up there, the only other item that is required by statute in order to be accomplished for under the statute is really the OSU Board of Trustees approval of OSU's participation on an ongoing basis. And we haven't really engaged in the conversations on what the appropriate timing is for that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the last three items, but I want you to know that we're working hard on them. One is Shutter Creek as a possible location for the headquarters and the research facilities of the forest. We are submitting a request to the Government Service Agency next month, working closely with the governor's staff on that and with Department of Administrative Services and OSU. We expect to submit that request with some contingencies that'll have to be resolved in order for a final decision to be made about whether the Shutter Creek site really can be easily transformed into a headquarters for the new authority, and what the cost would be of doing that. And there's some complications around some real old buildings that the Air Force put up in the 1950s that we're really working through right now with a lot of folks that know more than I do digging in on it. But we have targeted for a final decision by early fall on that. And again, I think we'll know before we come into the December land board meeting whether the Shutter Creek site is really going to work or not. I spoke with GSA a few times this week. They are being incredibly cooperative, are really interested in and hoping that this can take place. There's a cell phone tower that's got a lot of bearing on emergency services in the Southwest coast that also makes this a really attractive option. So I think everybody wants it to work. I think we just have to make sure that we can manage that site going forward in the context of the financial plan for the forest. And we don't want to trip up everything else based on unexpected costs associated with the site. So we're being careful about that decision.
I also want to add that we've been working closely with congressional staff, particularly Senator Jeff Murrelet and his staff. So they've been very helpful. And I expect to have a conversation with Representative Fazio because GSA is in his committee. But Representative Fazio is currently being quarantined because he got exposed to COVID. But he will be back in the saddle very soon.
And the startup costs are similar to Shutter Creek. We've been working very closely with members of the delegation, staff of Senator Murrelet and Wyden and Representative DeFazio's staff as well. Startup costs are one-time costs to stand the forest up until the harvest is occurring on a way that we can be financially self-supporting. It involves putting instrumentation on the forest, beginning to do the baseline monitoring that's necessary for the research. Right now, we have about $13.8 million in appropriations requests that the delegation staff are working on to put toward those startup costs. There are a couple of administrative grant opportunities in the current administration, including the Carbon Smart grant opportunity through the USDA that the university is looking at. And we're looking at another avenue with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on species recovery efforts as a beyond an HCP as a potential way to fund some of these startup costs. We'll have initial indications on our appropriations request when markup happens around September. And we'll be doing some intense decisions around the budgeting of those startup costs early in the fall, and have a progress report for you at the December meeting. Last piece is carbon, and this is the carbon project in terms of whether or not to register the Elliott State Forest in a regulated carbon market, so we can monetize the value of some of the carbon that's being grown in addition to some of the timber that's going to be harvested. We are one of the first projects that anyone is aware of that's trying to knit a carbon project through a regulated carbon market, along with having a habitat conservation plan on a publicly owned forest. And there are a lot of complications and complexities around that. But we're close to having that put in place. And by next month, I think we'll know exactly what the potential is for monetizing carbon on the Elliott as part of an ongoing research forest. And we'll be talking a lot with OSU and with land board assistants about the decision about whether to go forward and really pursue registration of the Elliott as in a carbon market. We'll do that early in the summer and move forward with the registration this year if that's the decision that's made. So that's the in-depth look at our work plan. And I just put it up just so you can kind of see it in relationship to Senate Bill 1546 and where we expect to be. Land board approval of a forest management plan will be ready for you to consider that, subject to contingencies, I believe, by your December land board meeting. DSL approval of a financial plan for the forest, that'll be done by December. I'm very confident that we can get there with that. OSU trustees authorization, that's pending for 2023. It doesn't have to happen in 2023. It might be in 2022, but that's just not a discussion that has been ripe to have with OSU. Federal agencies should be publishing the final HCP for comment. That is really right now, the calendar looks at spring for that. And we will know, but I have every confidence that we're going to be right on track this year with that. Financial obligations, common school fund being met, that I think we can all agree is going to be done and is done. And then the land board vote to decouple the forest. That will be ready for you to consider doing by your December meeting, subject to contingencies being put in place afterwards. But that can wait or it can go forward based on the plan that we're working on. Any questions you have, I'm happy to answer. There are a few items at the bottom of that are ongoing work and we're spending time on in terms of gearing up consultation and coordination around all of this work with tribal interests. We have East Hackey Ridge discussions to have, grants to put in, an initial appointment of board of directors for the forest authority, things like that. They all are important, but not on quite the same timeline that I just went through.
Two questions. One, your engagement and interaction with the tribes. I assume it's CT Clusie. I don't know if Coquel's at the table. Sort of, could you talk a little bit about what that engagement looks like and how extensive it's been? And I didn't know if other coastal tribes, including Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde and Siletz, as well as Cow Creek, had been engaged in that conversation.
I'll be happy to start, or if you...
I can tell you, Governor and members of the land board, that the CT Clutzy, the Siletz, and the Grand Ronde are all on the advisory committee, so they're very engaged. The Coquel I met with early on, and they said they would let me know when they wanted to engage, but we do keep them informed. And the Cow Creek chose not to engage, but we also keep them informed. So that's the process that we've been involved in. And it's probably getting close to, we were waiting for some more milestones, and it's getting very close for us to hit the road again and engage in some formal consultation. So those requests will be going out to the various tribes.
I'll also add that in 2019, when this started, we did do some formal consultation and start that process with the CT Clusie as well. So I think a part of the continuation of that is circling back to them and then repeating that offer to the other tribes to see if they'd like to do consultation now at this point.
And the federal agencies, when they go out on the NEPA process, they asked if they could be involved in those consultation process with us. And I said, yes, certainly. So we'll probably be setting some of those meetings up once that gets going.
Then my other question, I think for Jeff, and that is whether or not NOAA and U.S. Fish and Wildlife are adequately staffed to be able to do the HCP work that we need to get done to move forward.
Several years ago, Director Jim Paul, then I believe, entered into a funding agreement with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to help make sure they would be staffed in the process. NOAA Fisheries, NIMS, we did not have that agreement. And this year, because of staffing concerns and just collaborative conversation, we put U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in charge of the NEPA process. So they are running the calendaring of the NEPA process for us and on behalf of NOAA Fisheries. And I'm comfortable with the staffing levels there. And it's been great to have a working relationship with them. In fact, I think Shauna Everett from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service drove down from Portland today just to check in and is going to participate in our advisory committee meeting. I think NIMS has staffing challenges, not related to the Elliott whatsoever, but just because of retirements and moves in their aquatic biologist team. But we have just arrived at an agreement to provide some extra funding for them to contract with an aquatic biologist who met with us on April 1st for a few hours as part of a briefing session. And we're going to provide the resources so that they get staffed up and can keep pace with the calendar that Fish and Wildlife Service is setting. That's our hope.
Great, thank you. And then I just really excited about the possibilities that Shutter Creek may hold for the community. I think this is a really incredible opportunity and we'll keep my fingers crossed and watch with interest. Other questions or comments? Secretary Fagan.
Thank you, Governor. First, I just want to acknowledge I know this was an extraordinarily heavy lift during a short session. We've all lived through them as legislators, and so I understand this is a big lift during a long session. During a short session, I hope you have breathed since then, because I know that I'm sure it was extraordinarily difficult. And I know from my legislative team, but I know that the governor's team and our treasurer's team just put in a lot of hours. And so I just want to acknowledge that and thank both of you. I get to be here to be part of it, but I know that it really was the two of you and your teams that really put in a ton of hours and work during that short session. I just really appreciate it. I'm more of a process question. I really appreciate it. I'm very visual, so I love seeing that work plan. Is that something that, I mean, it sounded like there may be some action items for us in December, but would we get an update at the land board meetings between now and December? I'm excited to hear about the Shutter Creek, and that looks like it might be, at least there might be an update on that by our August land board meeting. And so I'm just curious if we'll maybe see that same work plan and then get updates on where things are at between now and December.
Governor and Secretary Fagan, you're exactly right. And I'm very visual too. I'm a very visual learner. And which is why I asked Jeff to put together something for me that I could actually see and not just write on paper. So you'll be seeing, you can expect updates at all of the land board meetings so that you know exactly where we're at. And then we'll plan on December's meeting being pretty Elliott based. I'm going to try to keep anything else off the agenda because we've got a lot to do. Yeah, it's going to be exciting. Just see it on the agenda. It'll always be under other, unless there's an action item that I need taken.
Thank you very much. I know there's going to be more thank yous later, so I appreciate your hard work.
All right. Well, I thank my staff for that presentation, and I rehearsed it last night with them, and I just totally went off script again, but my staff expects that with me. So I just have a couple of short items under the other category, and it'll just take a few minutes. So I wanted to update you on some Hood River forestry parcels that we have. We have almost 2 sections of land, about 1,000 acres of non-certified forest land in the Hood River County area. And when it's non-certified, that means the Department of Oregon Department of Forestry does not manage it. We manage it ourselves. And anytime this for your education, Secretary Fagan, because you don't know this probably, but anytime we make a request to decertify forest lands, we have to come to an agreement with ODF about that. And we have to come to the land board, and the land board has to agree. So we never make those decisions independently. We just make recommendations. So here we're dealing with 2 sections of forested, non-certified forest lands. They were up for auction at one point and never sold, and we don't know why. We're doing some homework on that, but it's pretty expensive for ODF to manage because they don't have an office nearby or staff, and some of that management can be done by our in-house forester, Ryan Singleton, who does a fabulous job. But some duties are more efficient and cost-effective to contract out. So we have been laying the groundwork for entering into an IGA, intergovernmental agreement with Hood River County Forest Management Department, where they would help us generate timber income by managing the forest. Thinning. Harvest could occur as early as fall, but depends on whether we get that agreement in place. And we're going to continue to work with Hood River County on that. So this is a win-win for us and a win-win for the county at this point until we decide long-term whether to keep or sell the remaining properties. The second one, it also involves timber, and that is in the Klamath District. Our DSL forester is working with the Department of Forestry on this. These are not prime timberlands. They're pine forests with low productivity and poor markets. It's about 6,800 acres, so it's a lot. The Klamath parcels are costing us about $200,000 a year to manage, and then $25,000 a year for fire protection. So we're looking at potentially decertifying that timberland. We're looking into a phased decertification, perhaps 6,000 acres, followed by an additional 800 acres once a final harvest project and contractual requirements are completed on those acres. We may end up not decertifying. Again, I just wanted you to be aware we're in those conversations with ODF, and we'll keep you apprised. The third a third and final item I wanted to bring to your attention is the marbled murrelet. And one of these days, Jeff, I don't know if you've ever seen a marbled murrelet, but I saw a preserved one in a jar at one of our advisory committee meetings. And I think y'all need to know what the habitat of these birds. It's fascinating. We had quite a presentation at an advisory committee meeting. So I might show that to you in December if we have time. But anyway, I digress. The marbled murrelet was uplisted by Fish and Wildlife Commission in July of 2021. Well, when they uplist a species, that triggers an 18-month clock for all agencies that have marbled murrelet lands to develop a species management plan, indicating how we plan to manage the lands for species recovery. Plans are due January of 2023. So why is this important to DSL? We have 4 types of land that this applies to. They're all on the west side within 35 miles of the coast, because that's the range of the marbled murrelet. They like the coastal range. The first one is the Elliott, as you can well imagine, but we're doing a habitat conservation plan, and so that should be taken care of. But if we don't get the HCP in place, we still have to have a species management plan ready by January of 2023. There are also some certified forest lands managed by ODF, about 12 to 15,000 acres, and some non-certified lands. And then also we have a few forested lands on the SNR, the South Slough National Estuarine Research Reserve. That is such a mouthful. So we are working with ODF staff to guide the management plan development process, and we'll be bringing that before you before January of 2023. And the HCPs for the Elliott and the Board of Forestry, Western Forest Lands, they will preempt any species management plan once they're finalized. So that's what we have to look forward to coming up. I'm kind of interested in whether we can put that 6,800 acres of Klamath land into carbon. I don't know if the trees are quality enough to do that, but we're actually looking at that because I just noticed this week that Washington State put 10,000 acres of their state land into carbon. And they're the first state in the nation to actually put their trust lands in carbon. So we hope we're right behind them with the Elliott. On some potential. Well, that does it for the land board meeting, Governor. I'll turn it back over to you to close out the meeting, and then we have some exciting things to do.
Any other comments from land board members? Hearing and seeing none, we've concluded our agenda, and so we're going to formally adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, and I want to welcome all of you, mostly all of you, to the ceremonial signing for Senate Bill 1546. And I am your Secretary of State, Shamia Fagan. And I just want to say what an honor it is to have been even a small part of this extraordinary solution. I do know that this has been something that so many of you have been working on for such a long time, including my colleagues on the land board, Governor Brown and Treasurer Reed. So I just want to acknowledge that I'm coming in at the very end. I kind of feel like it's like a basketball player who's been sitting on the bench the entire game and then all of a sudden gets to join like in the last 30 seconds and make an assist for the winning play. And I know that Treasurer Reed and I are basketball fans and he's good with that analogy. Governor, I couldn't think of a yoga analogy, but I know that like yoga feels good and signing this is going to feel good. So that's my sports analogy for you, Governor. But I just want to say it's an honor to be part of this, to have North America's largest world-class research forest right here in Oregon, providing opportunities to understand and combat climate chaos that is threatening the livelihood of our planet and our future generations. I also am celebrating that the Elliott State Research Forest will be the final contribution for the Elliott State Forest to our Common School Fund, to the benefit of our kids, who I know that we all care so deeply about. And finally, just want to thank and emphasize the role of our tribal partnership in this incredible success and reinstate all of our commitment to continue the collaboration with the original and first inhabitants of the Elliott Forest. And with that, I will turn it over to my friend and our state treasurer, Tobias Reed.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thanks everyone for being here. It is really exciting to be here to celebrate the signing of this legislation and the formation of the Elliott State Research Forest. This land board room has obviously been the site of a lot of heated discussions and passionate advocacy about the Elliott, but it's not just for those of us who are in the room right now in the current land board. This is a discussion that has gone back decades. So it's a particularly meaningful thing, I think, that we're going to see the signing of this legislation that accomplishes some important things. It allows us to decouple critical issues and enact a solution that will keep a forest publicly owned with public access. It will compensate the Common School Fund and release the forest from its obligation to be managed solely for revenue generation. It'll continue habitat conservation to protect species and allow for harvest and provide multiple forest benefits, including recreation, education, and working forest research. And it bears repeating that this was no easy task. I think, speaking for myself at least, there were moments when I wasn't sure we were going to be able to achieve all of these competing interests. But instead of giving up, what we saw was something really wonderful. Competing interests coming together to find a solution. And in a very real sense, I think what we are celebrating today is some of the very best of Oregon. It shows that Oregonians can come together around a common vision. They can disagree passionately and still figure out a way to reach a compromise that represents a real win for Oregon. So I want to thank all the members of the advisory committee, the staff at the Department of State Lands, and the Oregon State Treasury, of course, Oregon State University as well. All the hard work and commitment that is represented here is really worth celebrating. And I want to thank my fellow land board members. This was no easy task for us either, but I'm really grateful that we persevered. And finally, someone that was mentioned already today, I think it would be a mistake to not acknowledge the vision and encouragement of someone who played a really pivotal role early on, but didn't ultimately manage to be around to see the culmination of this tremendous effort. I didn't get to work with him for very long, but it was the forestry dean, Thomas Mannis, who deserves a lot of credit for this vision as well. And I can't help but think of him. So want to acknowledge Dean Mannis, Dean DeLuca, and the team at the OSU School of Forestry as well for helping to bring this vision to fruition. So in the end, what I really hope is that all of us can use this effort, this inspiration, as a reminder that when we can step out of our silos, we can accomplish some really great things for Oregon. Thank you. And with that, I'm happy to welcome Commissioner Cribbins, please.
Thank
Thank you so much. I'm Melissa Cribbins. I'm a Coos County Commissioner and a member of the Elliott State Research Forest Advisory Committee. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I grew up in Coos County, and for those of us in Coos and Douglas counties, the Elliott is our backyard. We care about it deeply, and we want to see it well taken care of. I think the thing that has touched me the most during this whole process is seeing how many other people care about the Elliott. It's nice to see that it's being treated as a real asset and a jewel for the entire state of Oregon. The stewardship matters so much to us, but it also matters to every person, every citizen in the state. And that's something that we should be very proud of. That's something that talks about who we are as Oregonians. I want to applaud my fellow advisory committee members for all the work that they've done. They really made a difference in the future of Oregon and for all of our children. In addition, thank you. I'm always nervous when I start thanking people because I know I will miss someone. There will be someone in the back of the room who will say, that woman did not thank me, but I'm going to give it a shot. So in addition to the advisory committee, I have to applaud the land board's leadership and vision in starting us down this path and in all of their support for these efforts. There are times when it definitely seemed like we had reached areas that we were not going to make it through. And knowing that we had the support of the land board and that we were following the vision that they had laid out made it easier for all of us to continue to push ahead. The Elliott State Forest deserves a special future, and that's what it's been given through Senate Bill 1546. As we discuss forest management and multi-use forests, questions always arise about the science behind the decisions that we make. The Elliott State Research Forest can help us to answer so many of those questions. I hope that in the future, we'll be able to base sound forest management policy decisions on scientific research gained from the Elliott. And yet there are many more people to thank for the work that's been done. The state land board and their staff have been unfailingly supportive, even through changes in the land board itself. The Department of State Lands and Vicki Walker have worked tirelessly to keep us moving forward. The National Policy Consensus Center, including Peter Harkema and Jenna Stoneman, have always believed that we would reach this moment that we're at today. And of course, I have to thank all the advisory committee members who helped to create and vet and draft Senate Bill 1546, including Bob Salinger, Paul Beck, Mark Stern, Keith Timchuk, and Colin Beck, as well as Jeff Huntington and Malia Masiba from Department of State Lands. Today, we're gathered to mark the passage of the bill with the signing, thanks to Governor Brown. It's a wonderful moment, but I think it's important that we all realize it isn't an end to the work, but a beginning with hope for the future. I'm proud to be here to mark this moment, and now it is my pleasure to hand this off to Oregon State University Provost Ed Fazer. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm Ed Fazer, Provost and Executive Vice President at Oregon State, and it is such a pleasure to be here this morning to celebrate with all of you. As the state's land-grant university and home to one of the leading colleges of forestry in the world, OSU has deep expertise in forest research and management. Our strength is a direct result of investment by the people of Oregon and the leaders of Oregon. We strive to serve our state, and we're an enthusiastic partner with the Research Forest Advisory Board in the creation of an extraordinary resource that will serve Oregon's environment and its economy. A research forest with the scale and diversity of the Elliott is unique in the United States, and it's rare in the world. I commend the advisory committee, the Department of State Land staff, and the faculty and staff at OSU who worked so hard to develop a framework that garnered broad support from stakeholders and the legislature. I also thank the State Land Board for persevering in its search for a solution that elevates the Elliott as an asset for Oregon. And certainly there's work ahead to implement SB 1546 and convert vision to reality. Know that OSU is fully committed to doing its part as laid out in the legislation, and we appreciate the legislature's trust in our ability to develop the research plan and manage the forest. And lastly, let me just mention a thank you to the treasurer for remembering Thomas Menes, who is one of our most visionary deans at OSU, and it's fitting today that we remember his legacy here. Thank you.
Last Last but not least, and I just have to say, I don't know about my fellow land board members, but it's really hard to believe that this moment is here. If someone had said to me 5 years ago that this would be the next step in the Elliott State Forest, I would not have believed them. So I'm just delighted to be joining my land board members, Secretary Shamia Fagan and Treasurer Tobias Reed, as I sign this bill, which will keep the Elliott Forest in public hands. And there were a lot of naysayers out there. Some thought the Elliott Forest would not be able to contribute to the future of Oregon's education system. But through this decoupling effort, the full value of the Elliott Forest will be invested in Oregon's school children for decades to come. And there are a lot of stakeholders who made this possible. Like Chair Cribbins, I'm always afraid to name names, mostly because I'm afraid I'm not going to say them right. But I wanted to start out with legislative leadership. Senate President Peter Courtney and Speaker Dan Rayfield. Let's give them a round of applause. Ways and Means co-chairs, Senator Senator Elizabeth Steiner Hayward and Representative Tana Sanchez, who were blessed with, I will just say, substantial resources in the February session, which we are very grateful for, but also they very much bought into this vision. So thank you to our co-chairs. Senators Jeff Golden and Representatives Ken Helm, who co-chaired, they didn't co-chair, they chaired the committees. We want to thank them, as well as all of the legislators who worked on and supported this legislation. Let's give your Oregon legislature a round of applause. Margaret Mead once said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world." Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So I want to say thank you to our advisory committee for exemplifying this sentiment. Thank you for your extraordinary work, including, of course, our Coos County Chair, Melissa Cribbins. Let's give her a round of applause. Lisa Aiello, Oregon Outdoor Council. Back with the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians. Paul Beck, Douglas Timber Operators. Dean Tom DeLuca, Oregon State University. Eric Farm with Barnes and Associates. Jeff Huntington, Oregon Department of State Lands. Michael Kennedy, Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. Michael Langley, Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. Ken McCaw, Oregon Hunters Association. Mary Paulson, Oregon School Boards Association. Bob Salinger, the Audubon Society of Portland. Mark Stern, recently retired from the Nature Conservancy. Keith Timchuk, Carrie's bigger brother. Van Dyke, Wild Salmon Center. Honestly, everyone who helped explore and shape this from idea to reality, local officials, representatives from industry, conservation, and education communities. I also want to say a special thank you to John Miller, just a good friend and mentor who pushed me every step of the way. Thank you, John. Tribal partners, the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians, the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, and the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. the leadership at Oregon State University, and in particular, Dean Tom DeLuca, Provost Fazer. It is spelled just like research, so I had to take a minute to make sure I got it right. And all the good people at the OSU College of Forestry. Thank you. Peter Harkema and the staff at Oregon Consensus, thank you so very much. The team at DSL who supported the advisory committee every step of the way, including Jeff Huntington, Malia Masiba, Ali Ryan Hansen, Bill Ryan, Ryan Singleton, Robert Underwood, and of course, Director Vicki Walker. Thank you for your extraordinary efforts. Honestly, everyone else who testified and weighed in during the years, the land board has worked to find a better path forward for the forest. As everyone has said, this bill is the product of a lot of hard work, frank conversations, and collaboration to find common ground and an enduring solution that serves the collective good. It was literally years in the making, but this bill truly brings the land board's vision to life. Together, we have found a way to sustain the Common School Fund and keep the Elliott State Forest in public hands, all the while protecting the Elliott's diverse habitats, guaranteeing long-term public access to the forest, and keeping the door open for economic opportunity for the South Coast. Treasurer Reed, you had an idea that brought our vision for the forest to fruition. The Elliott State Forest will have a lasting legacy as a research forest that will contribute so much to the development of knowledge around forestry and environmental stewardship. OSU has the best school of forestry in the entire country. And hopefully, with the addition of this research forest, will ensure that OSU, they are the best in the world. Thank you to everyone here who's displayed so much passion, patience, and persistence for the Elliott State Forest and its future. This is not a solution that would be possible in every state. The love and care for Oregon's natural wonders, which I have seen reflected in every stakeholder's actions during this process, is what makes this place and its people truly special. Thank you all for coming together and getting this done the Oregon way. So let's get the bill signed that makes this a new future for the Elliott State Research Forest and makes it all a reality. Let's get it done, you guys. Rearranging. Okay, some rearranging. There's lots of pens.